Who was the ancient great ape who fought and actually defeated Godzilla? Over the years, Godzilla has fought and conquered his fair share of titans, including some of the most dangerous alphas to ever walk the face of the planet. Every time, even if he gets battered and beaten down, he always rises to the occasion, and oftentimes, with some help, continues to reign supreme. This is what made his rivalry with Kong so fascinating, as the two were built up to equals to one another who could challenge each other for dominance, and over the years, they have shown that they can in fact contend with one another. Kong, however, is not the only great ape to fight Godzilla, and there is one in particular with a better record against Godzilla than even Kong. So today, Heralds of the Titans, let us discuss the ape simply known as the Rival, and discuss everything we know about the great ape that defeated Godzilla. The story in question is referenced in Godzilla Dominion, though it is not explicitly shown in full, as the story details Godzilla losing his hold over one of his layers. The Rival is an aggressive and highly territorial member of the great ape community, one who shows a much more proactive nature than many of the other apes, namely even Kong himself. While Kong is protective over his territory and will protect his domain at whatever cost, the Rival actively searches new lands to conquer, which led him to the doorstep of Godzilla's hideaway. When the battle began, Godzilla was on his home turf, and not only did he understand the layout of his fortress much better than the ape known as the Rival, but the home had water access and should have been a firm home field advantage for Godzilla. Despite this though, the Rival was able to oust Godzilla from his base of operations and beat him to the point where he now lay claim to this outpost, actually defeating Godzilla for territory. The exact details on how he did this are shrouded in a lot of mystery though, but we do know that he was strong enough to get Godzilla to abandon this lair for years. While we don't know exactly when this fight took place, we do know that Godzilla was a much younger Gojira, and the author of Godzilla Dominion, Greg Keyes, described Godzilla as being in his late teen years in relation to human aging. So based off of this logic, this conflict is millions of years old. This means that Godzilla had not yet grown to his fullest potential, and is a far cry from the Godzilla that we know today. But there is an interesting caveat to this idea. Most of Godzilla's evolution has taken place only within the last decade or so, and while to us humans this is a long time, for Godzilla it is barely a blip on his radar. He is hundreds of millions of years old and has lived far longer than any human being can even fathom, and this means that a decade for Godzilla is how he perceives mere seconds. Yet, this was the most rapid evolution that we've seen so far from the king of the monsters. Human civilization didn't have nuclear armaments until very recently, and therefore, Godzilla didn't absorb very much surface level radiation until around the 1940s. The earliest we see him in action on screen is in Monarch, which takes place across the latter half of the 20th century, and so just arguably the weakest form of Godzilla that we've ever seen on screen. While he does have his atomic breath abilities, and is far more durable than anything humans can hope to throw at him, he's nowhere near what he will become one day soon, and what we know of him today. We also know that this rivalry between the Gojira and the Kong is one that spans centuries, yet the great apes were able to kill a considerable number of the mighty Gojira in the distant past simply because they weren't as strong as Godzilla is today or anywhere near. This is evidenced by his desire to reclaim this part of territory many years later, which leads him into his first rivalry with Tiamat, which we've discussed previously. In Dominion, when he returns to this base, he is injured and severely battered by his conflict with Ghidorah, already putting him at a disadvantage against other titans. Yet Godzilla returns to this base where, for all he knows, the Rival is still living comfortably, waiting for Godzilla to one day return and to battle again. So then, the base of question still remains. Why would Godzilla willingly go into a battle that he previously lost while he was in this injured state? Why coax an opponent that he knows has beaten him before when he's not in his strongest condition? Right now, there isn't any firm evidence to suggest that he knew of the Rival's death, though it could certainly be argued that he understands ape aging and how it affects them differently. So perhaps Godzilla knew that the Rival was either naturally dead or is much older. It's also likely that the Rival may have abandoned this hideout after all these years. But the most compelling answer is that Godzilla was simply no longer worried. If he and the Rival were evenly matched all those years ago, and the loss of the battle was circumstantial, then Godzilla may have a newfound confidence with all of his new strength despite being injured. He has now been absorbing human radiation from man-made power plants for over half of a century, and the Rival is likely far too old to mount any sort of suitable resistance. so Godzilla's injuries may not have been severe enough for him to even be worried about the rival anymore, someone who previously defeated him. This is also supported by his battle with Tiamat, and the revelation that Tiamat has killed several apes over the course of her long life. While it's not outright confirmed that these bones belong to the rival, it is implied that at the very least, it is plausible, and that Tiamat may have been the one that killed the rival thousands to millions of years before Godzilla's grand return. If Godzilla is able to fight off Tiamat with relative ease, and cause her to submit despite being injured, then what does that say about the rival's power when Tiamat supposedly confronted him? As it stands, the battle with the rival was once a great challenge for a young Godzilla. This was a time in Godzilla's life where he could have been bested by many of the great apes, including this instance where he was driven out of his own lair in his own home. Over the years though, the status of power has changed significantly, and Godzilla has evolved far faster than any of the other titans, not just Gojira. Not even Kong with his great axe, an axe which clearly gives him a chance against Godzilla, is a shadow compared to how quickly Godzilla can change forms. And while the rival may have been a threat at one point in time to the king, something is made very clear in the book. Even Godzilla, as injured as he is, has no worry about the great ape known as the rival that once defeated him. So much so that he's confident enough to venture back there in an injured state immediately after fighting Ghidorah, the rival and the Godzilla that we know from 2014, 2019, 21, and now 24 would absolutely destroy this rival. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? Is there anyone besides King Kong that can compete with Godzilla on a one-on-one basis among the great apes? Or is there no longer any great ape that can hope to challenge the king? Can even Kong now compete with Godzilla's new pink form? And does this mean that the apes no longer stand a chance against usurping the king of the monsters? As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting and supporting the channel today. Smash that subscribe button, and I hope you're having an amazing day.